Such high level of, it's just so amazing. You don't get many chances to bring things back at this caliber. How are you enjoying your weekend so far?
How are you enjoying the weekend so far? The weekend. How are you enjoying it so far?
Is it the weekend now? I thought yesterday was the weekend. I've got to say, this is the best con we've ever been at.
Yeah.
Woo! For wacko crazy fans like you. None of us have ever been this busy ever. Like, non-stop. Mm-hmm. Because, you love us. You can't help yourself, really.
Oh, look at it, it's on.
You sounded a bit like Trump there. Hey, everyone loves this. The greatest hashtag ever, believe me, I would never, ever sound like Trump.
How did you three get the roles of Wolverine, Rogue, and Beast?
Beast?
Well, we auditioned for it. There was a general call for voice actors, and they called it Project X because they wanted to keep it a secret. Of course, they didn't give away half the bloody title. Right? They weren't really thinking. And Cal, I think, thought it was a show about animals. And I was reading the lines, and I'm going, Project X, my foot. This is X-Men. Because in 1962, when the first comic book came out, I bought it. And I was a fan of X-Men for this part of Beast. And when I got the call that I got the part, it was probably one of the more exciting times of my career, because here's a part of my childhood that I'm getting to manifest as an adult performer in real life. So that was my story at the auditions.
Wow, well, Sugars, a lot of us had been doing film and television and live theater until then. X-Men was only the second animated series that I ever did. And my agent, they're looking for a character who, they need a woman with a deep, husky, sexy voice who could do a southern accent. And she said, that's you, Lenore.
I turned it down.
The high heels guy, I would have killed you. But, and so I said, well, I'm busy doing film and television and theater and everything, so, animation, I don't know if I'm that interested in that. And I skipped, I didn't audition for the first auditions. But then she called me again and she said, Lenore, they still haven't found the right actors for this role. They're doing callbacks. And I know that the reason they haven't found the right one yet is because it's you. So get your ass in gear, get down to that studio and do the callback audition. So I said, okay. And then I just took one look at the character, the way she was drawn, with her hand on her hip and her hair back and her head up in the air. And I went, yeah, I think I can handle that attitude. And I just walked into the studio and the first lines were, my daddy liked to kill himself when he found out I was a mutant. And then it was, I remember I had me a boyfriend when I was 13. Had me a boyfriend till I kissed him. Poor boy went into a coma for 3 days. So that was the lines. I remember it like it was yesterday. And then all of a sudden, I heard all these producers in Los Angeles screaming on the other end of the headphones, going, "That's Rogue! Don't let her leave the building." That's how it happened.
And you're welcome.
Give me that.
Thank you.
I got a call from Karen Gora, who was the casting agent for the X-Men for Fox, not Fox. She lived in Toronto anyway. And she called me because she figured I had a gravelly voice today. I had never done a voiceover in my life. I was the singer in Canada, Toronto, the jingles, all that kind of bras, toothpaste, cereal, beer. Anyway, so she said, I just wondered if you were interested in auditioning for an animated, for a cartoon. I said, cartoon? Everyone wants to do a cartoon. I said, what do I have to sing? She said, no, you're not singing. I said, oh, okay, well, all right. What is it? She said, she could tell me, it's a secret. And George said, so I went to the audition, and I'm standing there, and so I said, they called my name, and they're all behind the glass, and you're in this little box, and they had the script there, which I was perusing, and I said, so why am I here? And they said, oh, you're auditioning for the role of Wolverine. And I said, who's Wolverine? Or what's Wolverine? Wolverine. I said, who's? He said, oh, he's like 5'3", tough as nails, would die if had be to fight and to defend the people that he loves and his family, and he's cranky. And that's why as soon as I heard cranky, I knew it was a shoe-in. But I had never read a comic. I didn't know who the hell the X-Men were, nothing, which is very odd. So anyway, they said, so I said, who do you hear him sounding like? And they said, Clint Eastwood, Ward Bond, not Robert Culp, a bunch of other weird names that I couldn't. I said, well, Clint Eastwood is always like, go ahead, like that very quiet thing through your teeth. And I said, there's a line here I'm reading, and I've never heard Clint Eastwood ever yell in any role he's done. He's always like contained inside stuff. And they said, well, but just me, I said, okay, like Ravelish sort of, yeah, I guess, okay. And they said, and the line, I said, so I read the line to them, and they said, because I asked them who it was, and they said, oh, that's Sabretooth. And I went, again, Sabretooth, I'm Wolverine. Is this an animal cartoon? Sure. No, and they had to explain the whole thing about the X-Men. I said, well, come on, Sabretooth, this got to be a Sabretooth tiger. I'm a Wolverine, toughest animal, pound for pound, up in northern Canada. No, they're mutants. Which to me was like, what the is a mutant? They explained the whole mutant thing, and they said, are you ready to read? They were getting a little anxious. You want an audition soon? I said, would you like to read? I said, sure. And it just came out exactly like this. I looked at it, and then they showed me the picture, and I went, well, you should have started with this. Anyway, so it started with this line, and I just read it to Sabretooth, and I didn't know who he was. All right, you egg-sucking piece of gutter trash. You always like pushing around people shorter than you. Well, I'm shorter. Try pushing me. And they just just silence. Like it was like they were saying, holy shit. So I read the rest of the lines were 15 minutes, whatever, and then they said, thanks, Cal, very much. We'll be in touch. Which is usually like, get lost. You'll never hear from us again. And then they called the next morning, 2 days, whatever later, said, we would love you to be our Wolverine. And I said, and I would love to be your Wolverine, whoever and whatever he is.
Any power, what would it be?
I would love to fly, personally. What about you? You didn't think that the question would get turned around to you. What other ones?
I think invisibility would be pretty cool.
morph.
Yeah, or morph. Morph would be neat.
Very neat.
Especially because now the new morph, he seems to absorb the abilities of whomever he's being. Like he could be the Hulk, and he actually has Hulk strength. But I'm like, just be Hulk all the time, dude. I don't know, but yeah, invisibility or the morph. Yeah.
Fly.
Oh,
Yeah. Fly.
If he
On the
becomes
wall.
Thank you for the question.
thank you.
Are you a bit sad that Aaron and Jesus never got a chance?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have seen that, but we decided that even if it wasn't going to be shown on screen, that it happened during that 6-year time jump.
So it is canon, sort of.
Yeah. Because we were really influenced by the comics, obviously, and Tom and I decided, even though we're not going to show it on screen, we're going to bake that into the episodes moving forward. So yeah.
And from the people here, do you think they can do well in the Walking Dead universe?
Absolutely. Are you kidding me? The mutants in the Walking Dead would clean up. They take out all the zombies in a day. That'd be fine. Yeah.
I thought I would use zombies in the Christmas Horror Story
There you go. Exactly.
with Bill Shatner.
Feel free to move the microphone up to your mouth.
I'm just, first of all, thank you for everything you have done. I've watched you growing up from a wee child, so thank you for all of that. And my main question was, if there's any character you would like to see introduced into the X-Men 97, who would it be and why?
Contractual obligations by Disney. We cannot answer that question at this time.
No, we can answer it. It's okay. Yeah. So there's a character that I grew up with as a kid. I really loved it. I always loved Wolverine, but Omega Red is like Russia's answer to Wolverine. And if you don't know who Omega Red is, look him up because he's a badass. He's got tentacles that shoot out of his wrists, and he can drain people's life force. He's an absolute psychopath. But he was Russia's answer to Wolverine. And I really feel like that would be a great. He's in a blip. He's in a one split like hair when they're flashing all around the world after Magneto blacks out the planet, and you see him for like a split second. But I would love to see them pursue that character.
Yeah.
So successful is because every single person who works on it either worked on the original or was a fan themselves of the original. And it's in every single molecule of this show. People really, really care about where it goes, which is why I think it's been a big hit, you know? Yeah.
Including the writers.
Yes, yeah.
And the artists.
Everyone who works on this show right now had to be a fan of X-Men. In the original, the only person who knew who X-Men were was Larry Houston, the guy who was the originator of the series. Otherwise, the entire staff had to be educated as to what the X-Men were before they started their jobs.
And Larry still goes to Comic-Cons too, and we oftentimes appear with him, and he's amazing. He was the very first black storyboard director in Hollywood, and he was a fanboy. He calls himself a fanboy of X-Men. And of course, when X-Men first came out in the comics, Stan Lee wrote it as basically kind of like the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
And so Larry really gravitated to the X-Men, and when he came up with the idea of coming up with an animated series about the X-Men, he took it to every studio in Hollywood, and they all turned him down and said, who's going to want to watch a series about a bunch of superheroes? And there was one woman in the very end. She had just taken over as the executive director of Fox Kids Network. Margaret Lesh, her name was. And he took it then to her, and she said, I'll do it. I think this can be a huge hit. And so it took a black man and a woman to make X-Men happen.
From the show, what character would you want to voice instead? Obviously not including your own.
Well, honey, I just love playing Rogue. I don't think I want to play another character. She's just too much fun.
Really, all the characters.
Go ahead, George.
I didn't know you were about to speak. There was a pause.
Nobody ever does.
I think every character is voiced by the perfect actor in this series. If you look at all the characters, you become the character that you're playing in a lot of senses, and a lot of you goes into the character, so that there's a perfect blend. And there's no other character that I would want to step into rather than Beast.
And I've mentioned this before, and it's always the same answer. I would rather play Cyclops. They can't stand each other, Mr. Pretty Boy. But I would like to be Cyclops just so I could be with Jean.
We're getting a little bit low on time, so we can quick fire the questions. That'd be really good. We want to get as many as we can, please.
What's one of your favourite episodes or storylines from the original sub?
The
So, one of my favorite episodes is part of the reason why I was so attracted to the show and really affected me as a kid that was getting picked on a lot. There was an episode called Cold Comfort that is up in the Alaskan wilderness, or
Cold Vengeance.
Cold Vengeance, my bad, yeah. And Wolverine is up in Alaska or somewhere way, way up north. And he's befriended this Eskimo tribe that's taken him in. And he's doing well. He's dealing with his PTSD. He's fishing and he's like kind of getting over his trauma. And then of course Sabretooth follows him there. And there's a line that he delivers, and because he sees everything just falling apart, and of course Sabretooth is threatening to kill everyone. And he goes, "There's no peace for me, not even here." And it was so beautiful. And that line as a kid, as a 12-year-old or whatever I was, that resonated with me so much, because I was like, I don't have peace. I don't feel like I'm ever going to be safe or peaceful in my life. And that one really, really stuck out to me. That episode was really strong. Yeah.
What about you guys? My favorite episode was Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, yeah.
I'd have to say, in the original series, my two favorites were A Rogue's Tale, because you get to hear her backstory, her origin story. And I also loved The Cure, which was the one where she goes to try and get rid of her superpowers. She hears there's a scientist who can get rid of your superpowers, and she wants to be quote-unquote normal, like everybody else, so that she can touch and so that she can have a life. But when she gets there, I mean, not to give it all away, but she, in the end of that episode, she realizes that she needs to actually just embrace herself for who she is.
In 1942, they go back to 1942, before Wolverine was Wolverine, and he's like a spy or an agent with the government, and he's looking for a doctor that they want to get. So he's in France, and the Nazis have invaded. It's called what is it? Old Soldiers. And it's so cool because Wolverine was all in black and a black toque, Canadian, typical. And, running all over, jumping over the ceilings and stuff and fighting with the Nazis. And he eventually meets Captain America. So that episode was just, I was in tears laughing when I watched it to prep for like X-Men 97 with Disney. Because here's Wolverine, like a hard nut that he is, tough as nails. And he gets up after Captain America throws his shield and knocks about a couple of Nazis off Wolverine, who was fighting 3 of them or something. And he looked up and he said, "I can't believe it. Mr. USA. Red stars and stripes and all." And so Captain America says, "I like your style." To Wolverine, he's still down on the ground. Wolverine says, "I wish I could say the same." Then they start, it goes on and on like that, but Wolverine won't let it rest about the outfit that he's got on. He said, "You never catch me wearing something like that." He said fatigues would be a little less obvious, and then they're climbing up the side of a cliff with the claws or something, the two of them. And I wanted to tell him at the time I watched him, said, "Don't start that conversation again." He just looks over and says, "Where'd you get that thing anyway? It's got an itch." The big tough, "It's got an itch." And I said, "Stop talking about material and stuff. Get up. You be Wolverine, young man."